This is Zimbabwe's network of political influence as it existed in 1997. This data was compiled using open source information from the media and also from some unclassified information from the US Embassy in Zimbabwe. So this is 1997, but we're going to look at this network as it evolves all the way up until the modern day. Now, the nodes here are coloured by ethnic groups. So the blue is Zulu, which is Robert Mugabe, the long-time autocrat of Zimbabwe's tribe. And green is the Karanga, which is the tribe of one of his potential rivals and potential allies at the time. So let's introduce you to some of the key players. In addition to Robert Mugabe himself, there are two key groups competing with each other in this early time period. We have on the one hand Mnangagwa Emerson, also known as ED, who is consolidating some support around him in this time period, and also the Majurus, particularly Joyce Majuru, who becomes the vice president, but also her husband Solomon Majuru, who has the support of various military leaders, who are these ones here. We also have down here the MDC, that's the opposition party, led by Morgan Tsvangirai. We'll see that evolve over time as well, but we're going to mostly focus on ZANU-PF, the ruling party, at this time. So let's start to move time forwards. Let's move into the 2000s. And we see various alliances break and get created. So we saw originally that Solomon Majuru was definitely the better connected of that couple, but by this point, Joyce Majuru is also going and creating various political ties here. You'll notice that there's quite a high degree of homophily on clan membership, so people are tending to go and create ties with their co-ethnic groups, although there's certainly ethnic groups that are bridging the gaps between these. So if we move on up into 2005, we see the Majurus are really consolidating quite a lot of power here. They've created a lot of connections with key actors, and particularly the military they have quite a strong grip on. Emerson is also going and creating ties, although generally he's mopping up the parts of ZANU-PF that are not the Zulu tribe. We fast forward to 2007 now, and at this point there is a really strong network built around the two Majurus. They have a lot of ties, mainly within their ethnic group, but also some cross-cutting ties. And Emerson has a relatively smaller network, at least compared to the combined force. So at this point, it really looked like Joyce Majuru might be the next president after Robert Mugabe, whether that was by his death or by actually actively challenging him. And so that challenge came. What we see is this tie is created here from Solomon Majuru to Simba Makoni, who runs against Robert Mugabe in this time period in the 2008 election. And the Majurus go and actually support this bid. Now, unfortunately for them, this presidential bid was not actually successful, and Simba Makoni doesn't end up becoming president. Instead, it's actually Morgan Tsvangirai who wins the 2008 elections. Now, Robert Mugabe reportedly was willing to step down after losing, but the various military commanders told him he had to stay in power in order to go and maintain their own grip. So what happens next? Well, we're seeing for a while Joyce becoming more central even now, and ED becoming even more peripheral. And this continues right up until 2011, when suddenly Solomon Majuru is killed. And this goes and creates quite a big rift in the network, because although Joyce Majuru now has some connections to military leaders, most of the strong ties being built there came about because of her husband's connections and not her own. And we see now some reorganization as she initially goes and leaves the government, and then in fact is kicked out of the party entirely in 2014. Now, what we also see here is a new figure emerging, and this is Grace Mugabe. This is Robert Mugabe's second wife, and for a long period, if we look back here, she was essentially just an isolated figure connected to Mugabe and no one else. But around this period, in 2013, 2014, she starts to go and gain various connections. And in fact, she's becoming extremely good at mopping up an awful lot of the Zuzuru members of the ZANU-PF, some of which Joyce Majuru had left behind. So we'll see this evolve a little bit more. And at the same time, as well as Grace Mugabe benefiting from Joyce Majuru's exit from the party, Edie is also going and starting to benefit, and he's bringing in even some connections to rival tribes. So we fast forward to the present day. Now at this point, Grace Mugabe has connections to a lot of political leaders, and one of those connections is the vice president. And he has the various commanders of the military under his direct command. So Robert Mugabe has given her quite a lot of power by giving her a political ally and giving that political ally some direct connections to the military and security forces. Now Emerson, on the other hand, is quite well connected. He's quite central within the non-Zuzurus, but he only has limited connections to the military apparatus, which may be a difficulty for him to take over in the event of Robert Mugabe's death. Joyce Majuru is an interesting one here because she has gone off at this point and created her own party. She's disconnected from most of ZANU-PF, but she still maintains some of the ties with the military figures here, which means that you shouldn't go and count her out either. Now, again, I said we wouldn't talk too much about the MDC, but we can see over here that there's been various splits within it. It's split into small parts. A few bridging leaders who try and keep it going, but they're quite a disconnected force at this point. One option, of course, is that one of these other groups might go and ally with them and create a coalition, but it's not clear at the moment that that is going to take place. So this is what the network looks like after we remove Robert Mugabe. So the picture is quite similar here from before, that it seems like the three groups have some advantages and disadvantages that really balance each other out. So Grace Mugabe has only indirect connection to the military, and it's hard to know how sustainable that control that the vice president will have over the people will be in the case of Mugabe's death. Similarly, Joyce Majuru has reasonable connections to the military as well that remain there even now. ED has fewer connections to the military. However, he has gone and consolidated more power here. Nonetheless, it may be difficult for him to expand much beyond where he is right now, given that most of the rest of the people he would need to pick up are not his co-ethnics, whereas Joyce Majuru or Grace Mugabe could go and pick up various Zuzuru members. So the picture here is that there are definitely many different combinations of alliances between these groups that could take place after Mugabe, and it's probably not likely that any one of them can very easily take power without at least some defections from other group supporters, or perhaps even an alliance between these groups.